The spotlight is on the leadership of one of Johannesburg's most critical public entities, the Johannesburg Social Housing Company, JOSHCO. Themba Mathibe, the agency's acting Chief Operations Officer and the CEO, who is also the CEO of the Johannesburg Development Agency, was arrested earlier this week and charged with money laundering. The high-profile executive, who oversees vital social housing and urban development projects across the city, appeared in the Alexandra Magistrates Court and was granted 50,000 rand bail, sending shockwaves through the city's political and business circles. The charges against Mathibe are reportedly linked to alleged procurement irregularities within JOSCHO, the entity responsible for providing affordable rental housing to thousands of Johannesburg residents. This development raises serious questions about governance and financial oversight at municipal level, particularly concerning funds intended for public welfare. Let's pick up that conversation. Let's look at what it means for the future of JOSCHO's critical mandate and the integrity of the city's developmental projects. Let's do that with Itumeleng Selialia, Senior Intelligence at Fulcrum Analytics. Good afternoon and thank you for your time. Let's just start with the Mr. Mathibe holding two positions simultaneously. He's the CEO of JDA, Johannesburg Development Agency, acting COO of JOSCHO, the Social Housing Company, and this is where the allegations emanate from. Just that on its own, is it ideal to have an individual, acting in such senior positions at two entities at the local government level in a city like Johannesburg that has this arrangement where it has entities that are styled as companies on their own?
Hi, Susan. Thank you for having me. No, I would definitely say that this case highlights the structural governance failure within the City of Joburg's municipal entities, particularly in how executive authority and oversight seem to be managed. Mr. Mathibe's JDA CEO role for approximately 2 years while simultaneously acting as the CEO of JOSCHO. And that dual mandate concentrated executive power across two very strategically linked entities responsible for urban development and social housing. And South Africa's municipal governance framework, particularly under the Municipal Finance Management Act, is designed around a separation of roles, independent boards, and shareholder oversight. Now, when those safeguards are weakened, internal controls become less effective, especially in high-risk areas such as procurement and contract management. So the fact that law enforcement was able to raid JOSCHO offices as part of investigations into irregular contracts actually suggests that oversight mechanisms have actually failed to detect or act on risk early enough.
And as you talk about that, the separation of roles, and you put it so eloquently and so clearly, that separation of roles, why would the Chief Operations Officer even come up in the conversation about procurement? Or is that how it works? Is that a standard and par for the course for those of us who are not familiar with how these things work, that this would be one of the roles that you'd expect, that when you are probing how procurement was carried out, you would ask questions of the Chief Operations Officer?
Well, I want to start off by saying that procurement in social housing is inherently high risk because it involves large financial flows and long-term contracts and multiple layers of service providers. So in this case, we can definitely say that it did make sense for him to be involved because the police raids in JOSCHO's offices reportedly uncovered a substantial amount of cash in the offices of the official company, and as part of an investigation into irregular contracts. So they were not there to actually uncover this instance of what they're suspecting is money laundering. So while the legal process is still unfolding, this points to a classical procurement vulnerabilities that are apparent there with weak bidding, adjudication independence, and inadequate monitoring and contract execution, which we can hold the CEO accountable for, him and his board. So too often, the procurement system appears compliant on paper, but there's a lack of real-time enforcement and consequence management.
So what are the possible implications and what are the loopholes that would need to be closed for an agency like JOSHCO, given its critical mandate? I mean, social housing, low-cost rental housing stock availability is a critical issue for a city like Joburg.
So some of the vulnerabilities that we are actually seeing here and some of the loopholes that would be apparent is that the impact of JOSHCO is a significant one. Even before any court outcome, institutions involved in social housing operate on trust, and especially trust from National Treasury, development finance institutions, lenders, and implementing partners. So when a senior executive is taken into custody, such as what has happened now with Mr. Mathibe on Monday, when he then later appeared at the Alexandra Magistrates Court on money laundering charges, that immediately raises governance risk in the eyes of a lot of funders. So even though the charges are not yet explicitly linked to JOSHCO, we need to remember that the reputational damage is real. Funding decisions may actually also be delayed, and oversight conditions will be tightened, and there will also be a very slow movement in terms of the ongoing projects that are currently underway, all of which directly affects the delivery of affordable housing to low-income residents, which is the whole point here. So in effect, governance instability translates into service delivery delays, and those delays disproportionately affect the most vulnerable people in our community.
And lastly, Itumeleng, I don't know, feel free to talk to this any way you think you can, because it is more of a political question more than anything else that has to do with, probity questions and how you probe and follow through on these allegations. Mr. Mathibe is a prominent ANC Youth League figure, and I did see some chatter, certainly on social media, that sort of says this whole arrest and all these issues, there must be some political link to it and questioning the bona fides of the investigation. Just your thoughts on that. What do you make of that in the context of what we're talking about? Obviously, he's innocent until proven guilty by a competent court of law. But once again, we're seeing this narrative that says it's all political.
Well, when you look at his political career and his deployments, he became, like we've been saying, he was in this position. He's been in this position for 2 years now, or both positions for 2 years, and he's around roughly 28 years old now. So the deployment could have also been political and very strategic on the part of the ANC. But now when we're starting to see a breakdown in terms of the relevance of these kind of deployments and the questioning of the validity of these deployments when it comes to governance, and now the raid was instituted and it was driven by the SIU, which is very proactive, which was a very proactive mandate by the SIU. So we can see now there's a breakdown in terms of trust when it comes to whether the SIU has political mandates that somehow also have affected the specific investigation. Yeah. And we cannot write that off completely because of the current climate that we are seeing.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for your time and for your insights. Itumeleng Selialia, it's one of those fascinating stories. He is one of the youngest leaders of these entities, is Themba Mathibe. And of course, as I said, he's an active he's been very active in the ANC Youth League. As a result, you are seeing a lot of members and supporters of the ANC weighing in about these developments of the last few days.